Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of the Relocate Podcast. So, today I have Kandis, who is from Florida. She relocated to the wonderful country of Mexico. And I'm excited to have you actually today because you're the first person that I've had a discussion with who actually relocated from one country to another, period. So, I'm very excited to have you. Candace has been in Mexico for a little over 5 years. So she has a wealth of experience to share with us about moving abroad. And I'm very curious about how your time there is going. So before we get into that discussion, though, would you mind telling all of us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so my name is Kandis, originally from Florida, majored in education. I left Florida and went to Louisiana where I taught for 2 years there in this program called Teach for America. And after that, once my 2 years was done, headed over to Texas. And after Texas for a few years, started getting a little eerie about education. I knew I loved teaching, but I just started falling out of love with it. So I had a few friends say, go abroad, try something different, change the location and see how you feel. And ever since then, I've been abroad now for 6 years and I feel rejuvenated to teach again. I love the field. So now I just like my passion for education has lifted and I'm more like refreshed within everything.
Neat. I just realized two things. I said 5, you said 6. So 6 years.
Well, I've been
Sorry,
abroad
y'all.
6 years, 5 years in Mexico. So you're still good.
We're gonna get into that too. Okay. So Florida, right? That's where you spent your youth, your childhood. At what part of Florida actually?
Yes, I'm from Tampa, Florida.
Okay. Tampa. What was it like growing up there?
It was very chill. I feel like Tampa's like where you go to like raise your family, have the beach scene, relax, and it's very chill. It could be like a tourist destination, but it's more so like just relax and chill. You have Orlando right there, you have Miami more further south, but it's like a nice mix of like relaxation, tourism, and then just raising a family.
Okay. Uh, is it diverse, kind of like how Miami is?
It's really diverse, but it's crazy how I feel like Miami has a lot of like Cuban and specific countries within Latin America versus Tampa like has a lot of Dominicans. Actually, we have a big Cuban population too, but we have a lot of Dominicans, Hondurans. We have a lot of people like we have a lot of Haitians too. So I feel like it's very similar to Miami. I will say we just have like a mix of everybody, like Latin America, Caribbean, even like a big Asian population as well, like in Tampa, which I feel like isn't really highlighted much in Miami, but we do have like a big Asian population. So it's a very big, mixed, diverse group.
I didn't know that about the Asian population there. I think that's neat. Or at what point did you realize that your time in Florida was coming to an end?
Yes, for me it was like senior year of college. In my program, my one of my professors, she actually said, yes, and as a teacher, you're going to either go back home and live with family or live with friends, like get a roommate or something like that, or get married. And I was like, wait, get a roommate, live with family, get married? I said, no, I don't like any of those options. And just the thought of staying in Florida and not being a possibility, it just wasn't exciting to me. So I had like a mentor my freshman year, and he did Teach for America. He told me, you should apply for this and see what happens. And that's when I was like, okay, I know I can't stay in Florida. Like just the thought, I just don't want to do it. So I applied for the program. I just like prayed on it. Right after college, I think I spent a week in Tampa and then headed straight to Louisiana. So I didn't have much break in between like college and then adulthood.
Okay, well, that's exciting. You jumped right into the career. You just pretty much head first right after
Yeah.
college. And you went to where exactly in Louisiana for Teach for
Uh,
America?
yes, I was in Baton Rouge, so like the like central south part.
Okay. And would you mind touching bases on what Teach for America is for people who may not be familiar with that program?
Yeah, so it's a program that it tries to recruit people like either out of college or already in adulthood to offer up at least 2 years of their time to working in areas where the education system isn't as developed or it's a little lackluster or it's not as progressive as it is in other parts. And it's just trying to really build up the system, trying to help kids that are in disadvantaged situations. And so that's what the moral focus of the program is. They mainly kind of lean on people who are not in education. So I think for my experience was a little different because they get people from different backgrounds, like someone who majored in finance or someone who went to school for communications. Like it's not always an educator that they seek. So it's very interesting. Yeah, it's like people who just regular people who come and commit to at least 2 years, work in like Title I schools under like underprivileged, like disadvantaged situations, and just trying to bring forth like a change.
Okay, yeah, I also didn't know that. I thought it was program just designed for people who went to school for education. So
So,
glad you touched bases on that. Okay. So you fulfilled the 2 years of that program in Louisiana.
yes, I did my 2 years there. Yes.
Okay. And did you stay in Louisiana after those 2 years?
No, that's when like when it was coming out of my 2 years, I was like, do I want to stay here longer? And I just something in me was like, no, it's time to go. Like try something else. Like I love Louisiana, but I think coming from Florida, I was so used to like a faster pace. I have a friend relocate to Houston, and she invited me out one week, and I went, fell in love with it, and I was like, I'm gonna try, Texas out. So that's when right after I finished my 2 years, packed up my stuff again and moved straight to Houston, so Houston, Texas.
Okay. Oh, when you made that visit, did you partake in Sunday Fun Day?
I know, like at one point we did like Prospect Park. That's when it was popular.
Oh
I think we
yeah.
went to like a bunch of different things. I'm pretty sure we did Sunday Fun Day too. I really like Texas. Let's see. And it was different than Louisiana. Like I love Louisiana, but I was like, no, I need something different.
A little more like fast pace.
Yeah, yeah. I just didn't like the fact that you had to go to like New Orleans to have fun, and I was exhausted. Like taking an hour drive there and back. It was very exhausting.
Okay. Oh yeah, because Baton Rouge is more of like a college town and
Yeah, it's
like
like
the
family
cities are
college
built.
town.
Yeah, like the city's kind of built around Baton Rouge. I mean LSU.
Yes,
Yes.
the whole city is like LSU Southern. That's it.
Oh yeah, Southern's there too. Okay, shout out to Southern HBCU. You took your talents to Houston, and you were still kind of sticking with the theme of education, teaching. How was your experience in Houston as far as your career is concerned?
Yes, I would say that my experience in Houston was very interesting. My first year, I landed a job at a charter school called KIPP, and it was crazy. I interviewed with one lady originally, fell in love with her. I was like, oh, we're so aligned. This is gonna be perfect. And then I showed up first day of training, and I was presented with a different lady. I said, who is she? They're like, oh, this is your new principal. And I was so confused. So there to say. I stayed 1 year because it was just not a good experience. And then I transitioned from there to the local public schools, so like Houston Independent School District. And so I did my last like 2 years at HISD, which was very interesting within itself as well. And I think just from that like whole experience between the first school in Houston and then the second school in Houston, I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm starting to get tired of teaching. It was just very it was a lot. It was a lot going on. It was not what I expected at all. Especially coming from Louisiana. I was kind of confused. I was like, I know I love teaching, but this isn't it.
Were you were you teaching elementary, middle?
Yes, so I'm an elementary school teacher.
Okay. Did you kind of just stick with that theme throughout your career in the US?
Yeah, so I'm
Okay.
actually like my degree is in early childhood.
Okay.
And so I'm certified from like the little ones in pre-K up to like sixth grade. So I mainly try to stick in like lower elementary though. That's where I most that's what I love the most is lower elementary. So I usually don't go higher than like second or third grade.
And did you like Houston at all as far as everything outside of work?
Yes, and that's what I think kept me was like I loved Houston. I made like a great friend group, like amazing friends, and I think it was just like a that was also like a positive experience, which was a little different than Louisiana was. I think I made good friends. They were amazing. I still actually keep in contact with them, and so that's what kept me wanting to stay in Houston. Like, oh, I love my friends. I love my friends. I love my like my social life. I just think like the work aspect of it was at the point where I was like, okay, I'm getting tired with the work life. What do I do? So yeah, that's why I was like, okay, I was teeter totter, like, do I stay? Do I go? But my friends is what kept me truthfully in Houston for as long as I was.
Oh, and how long was that exactly?
I stayed 3 years. I stayed 3 years in Houston. Um, and that's when I was going to continue going, but I just didn't know. I was like, where do I go? I didn't want another situation where I go to a different school and it's still like the same thing. And I had friends who were, oh, try this district. And I was like, I don't want to travel so far. And so I think that was me. Just didn't want to travel far. Houston traffic is already terrible.
Mm,
And so, at that point, some of my friends, they were just like, try something different. They also encouraged me just to like go abroad. They said, you love to travel anyways, try it out.
you have good friends. Yes. Okay. So you're at that crossroad of should I stay in this career or should I stick with it but try a different way of getting your foot through the door? What resources are even out there
hmm
for people who still want to be in education as far as teaching but abroad? I mean,
There's
where's that easy information for you to even find?
It actually is like a lot of information online. Like there's Facebook groups, there's so much like resources. So I actually met a girl from a Facebook group who added me to a Teaching International group. And then from there I found other Facebook groups. And just it was so many teachers on there who, you know, they wanted to still stay in education, but they didn't know they were also just burnt out with like the US education system. And then from there, like you find recruitment companies that help match you with schools internationally. So you can do it by yourself. You can apply for schools abroad, but the everyone says if you want like a really good school or a school that's well known and popular, it is best to go through a recruitment company because they vet you and they vet that school because there have been situations where people get abroad and they find out their school isn't what it was presented. And so now you're in another country and it's like, oh, what do I do? So thankfully I did like I went through a recruitment company. I actually did like a job fair in Atlanta, went to that for like a weekend and I landed a job before leaving the job fair. And so that's when I finished up my school year in Houston and like started packing and selling all my things. And I did 1 year in Colombia before COVID hit. And that's when I left Colombia, went back to the States, was applying for jobs, panicking, freaking out. And that's how I landed in Mexico.
Okay. Oh, Colombia, the country, not
Yes, like the country.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Colombia was actually your first international like destination for
Yeah.
teaching. Okay. And then COVID just happened and I mean COVID, golly, man. You went back to the US after briefly being in Colombia. And then what? I need popcorn. I'm like,
So I want to say when I left Colombia, it was right when the borders were closing. I want to say around like end of February, March. Like Colombia literally closed their borders. They were one of the last few South American countries that opened them back up. Like they completely closed their borders. So I left right before that. I was like at home with my mom, my dog. Like I was applying for jobs, but at that point, like everyone was kind of confused. Like they were hiring. But then some countries were like, but our borders are about to close. We don't know what will happen. So it got to the point where it was so late in the international hiring season. Even though for the US, we're like, oh, that's February, March, you still have so much time. But for international schools, they start hiring around October, November. So for me coming in like in March, it's like not many options left. And those options that were left, it's like, do you really like that school? Or this school isn't sure how their border situation is going to be. So when it got all down to it, I was like, okay, maybe I should say find a country that is probably a little bit more open. And so what's funny is I ended up the last few interviews was with the school in Mexico and the school in Jamaica. And I saw how Jamaica completely was shutting down. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. We cut some schools off, like trying to get to Qatar. How is that going to happen? So I just was turning down all these job offers and just leaning on Mexico to work because Mexico was like, we're not closing.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. Mexico was wide open. I know. I was there.
also said we are not closing. So when I saw that, like I realized, okay, like they're not shutting their borders down. Let's try to just lean in on this school. Got that offer, accepted it. It was actually funny. It was one of the schools I turned down at the job fair to go to Colombia. So it was like, hey, do you want to take me back? So accepted that job offer at that school and then literally moved I want to say in July. So I was in Florida for like March, April, May, June, like about 4 or 5 months before heading to Mexico.
Are there any barriers to entry as far as someone who wants to do something similar to like what you did, move from the US to Mexico and pursue same type of field? Or even just in general, like if you're moving, if there are
Yeah,
any barriers to entry?
I would say the beauty of being a teacher is they're hiring everywhere in the world, like not just a US thing, it's like a global thing. Everyone needs a teacher, especially if you're a certified teacher. They want you. Like all these countries, like really are like desperate for teachers. Now, with regards to that, it's like just finding a school, making sure like they are either going to cover your visa. That's a big conversation, visa coverage, because a lot of legit schools will cover your visa. You don't have to think about that. But if they're not legit, some of them will want you to cover it, which is like, wait, how am I supposed to do that? So luckily, I got hired by a school that was handled everything for me. All I had to do was go get my passport, like get the visa, put in my passport, fly to Mexico. They handled everything else. But I will say for those who are not in education, it is a little bit harder. One thing I always tell people, if you are wanting to go abroad, try to get like a remote job in the US that will allow you to work abroad, or try to find like a niche, like something you're good at that you can bring to a new community. But also just thinking about just like pricing, because what someone would charge or would be willing to pay in the US, they're not always going to be willing to pay that in a different country. So I tell people, if you're not teaching, like bring over a US job to another country, or find something that you're really good at that area might be lacking, whether it's like a food business, which, those could be up and down, or I'd say like hair or just different things of the sort. I know some people here who are very big on YouTube and like financial awareness, trying to get people like transitioning people are very popular here too. Like, hey, let me teach you how you can save money to live abroad. So people find like different niches to adapt to living abroad, or they usually do what I do, they teach. Or yeah, like
And you mentioned fees. Um, what type of fees exactly did your job cover?
yes. So when we're traveling to a lot of these countries, usually like, we get visa free entry, or say for example, Mexico, like they include that into your ticket price, right? So you don't even notice you're paying for something. But if you're wanting to like live in like I think Mexico, you can stay in Mexico for 180 days on a tourist visa. But if you are working there, you can't just come and go, right, within like a calendar period. So you have to get a work visa. And so with that, you have to, well, you or your company that's sponsoring you, they have to go to the Mexican consulate in the US or wherever you're living or whatever country you're wanting to live in. They have to apply for the visa for you. And from there, like you have to go to that appointment, get the visa in your passport, and then within like I think usually a lot of countries 30, 60 days you have to go to the country you're wanting to relocate to and continue like process within their country to finalize it. So it was very similar when I was in Colombia. When I was in Houston, I went to the Colombian consulate. I did handle all my paperwork there, flew to Colombia. They finished processing me. Mexico's a little different because all of the Mexican consulates in Florida were closed. So I had to fly to Atlanta to get my visa, fly back to Florida, finish packing, and then head over to Mexico. But I'm on a work visa. Some people they are able to get, say, visas, for example, like financial solvents, like where like you have a certain amount of money in your bank account, you're able to prove like, hey, I can afford living here, but I want to, I don't want a tourist visa. I just want to be able to live here. So you could do like the financial one, or some people use student visas, or some people do retirement visas. Every country is different. And Mexico is one of those countries where it's a little easier to get a visa to stay longer in the country versus other countries are a lot harder. But Mexico is a little bit more like lenient, but I will say, they are making it a little bit more difficult for people these days because so many foreigners are trying to relocate here.
I think I read somewhere that there are more people who are moving from the US to Mexico than there are Mexican residents moving to the US.
Yes. But the crazy thing is like people think, like when you think about like just the border things, right? It's really not Mexicans. It's everyone else in Central and South America. Like Mexicans really aren't leaving Mexico. They are. It's because they're in a certain town or region that really isn't much opportunity. But like where I'm living in Mexico City, it's like one of the largest. It is like one of the largest cities in the country. Is the capital. So there's so much opportunity here. They live a like a very good life. Um, Not as amazing as some people would feel or think, but it's a lot better than what like I feel like the US mentality is like, oh no, they're like in these huts, they're starving. Like, no, that's really not the case here in a lot of areas. Like yes, every area is different, but it's not the like what you see visually every day.
In Mexico City, how does the education system there differ from your experience in the US?
It's a lot different, right? I will say, just looking at their public school system is a lot different. Class sizes are huge. They actually, because there's so many kids, not even enough teachers, they do like half days where they take one group of kids go in the morning, then in the afternoon they switch and it's another group of kids. And one teacher is dealing with both groups of kids, sometimes over 40 kids, right? So the public school system is very different here. Same thing in Colombia was very similar. And actually, I have a friend in Brazil who's like a local like Brazilian. He says same thing in Brazil. So I don't know if it's a like a Latin America thing, or maybe it's something just completely different. But in like being a public school teacher is not it's not for the faint of heart in Mexico. So I do work at a private school, in a sense, when it comes to the private schools here, it's similar but different than the U.S. of where you do have more privileged students who come from more well-off families as well. So the in a sense of that, like, you're dealing with a completely different demographic of students. Like a lot of your kids, like they have been to probably more countries than you. Their parents are super well connected with like celebrities and other like politicians and very like global places all around. So that is a complete difference. But I will say one thing I found different teaching abroad is the support. And I think that's what keeps me like teaching abroad isn't easy. I tell people it's not all butterflies and rainbows, but it's the support is different. You don't feel as much stress. You don't feel as much pressure. Like in the US, it's like teach to the test, teach to the test. And if you don't, the kids don't perform, then you're a terrible person. Where did you go wrong? Versus teaching internationally, a lot of it's focused on like the happiness of the child. Like, are they happy? Like, that's what they really care about. Oh, their friendships, their social development. Like, yes, the parents are focused on the education piece of it, but they do want their child to enjoy school and then love school. So I think you do have a lot more parent support as well. Like the parents are really invested. Um, they are super supportive. You reach out, they whatever you need, they are there. So and even your administration is typically a lot more supportive as well. Like whatever you need, the school will get it. Like if I say, hey, I need 60 whiteboards and I need 100 pieces of glue or I just need to print a book off, they're not going to question me. They're like, okay. Like versus in the US, they're like, okay, well, what are you going to pay for? What are you going to cover? Oh, we can't approve that. Or if you go to them about student issues, like, well, all we could do is like suspend him or call his parent. I mean, granted, like handling behavior abroad isn't cutesy either, but you don't get as much behavior. And if you do, like the school is kind of supportive of you. And the parents are really supportive of you as well. So it's even behavior is night and day.
That's crazy. The US wants us to pay for everything. Like,
Listen, I haven't paid for anything school wise since I left the US. Like I can if I want to, but it's like why would my school will pay for it or someone will like give you something or like donate to you. So it's never like where you feel pressured to go out and spend so much money for your classroom.
I'm so glad that you touched bases on this because I didn't even I just thought that was just a general thing across the board where if a teacher wants supplies like crayons or markers or things of that nature, you have to crowdfund for it or we are so
That
messed
is a
up here.
big thing in the US, but
Oh my
abroad
gosh.
it's really not like that. Like even if you tell the other day I had meet the teacher also in a supply drop off and like that's what it's like they drop off the supplies and those supplies really last you the whole year. Sometimes like there's extras. We send the extras home with the kids versus the US we feel like, no, let me hoard it because I might have a group next year that won't bring in anything. But no, like we send supplies home. Like, oh, why would we keep them? We're gonna get more in the next year. So it's completely different. I guess our parents are pretty well off, but even when you go to like well off districts in the US, it's still not always as supportive with supplies. Like I know friends who work in very like prestigious districts, but it's still not as oh, like, hey, I went to my principal, like, hey, can we get access? Can you pay for the rights to like Nearpod or different like teacher programs? Okay. Like you don't get questioned like why. They're just like, I think it's gonna help my students. And they're just like, okay, let's do it. So it's so different, so different.
So overall, if you had to grade your experience as far as your career is concerned and just how you feel overall about education, the education
Mm.
space in Mexico, what grade would that be?
I would definitely say, hmm, I want to give it a complete 10, right? I would give it like a nine, like an eight or a nine, because it's
Okay.
not,
And
like I
and
said,
that's
it's not
good.
perfect. Yeah, so that's still
Okay,
really
gotcha.
good because it's not perfect, but it is still it's very like positive directed. Like there's when I say like not a 10 because there's are some days where I'm like, this is just so silly. Why did y'all think to do this? But no one has a perfect job. Like nowhere's gonna be perfect, but it's still I tell people all my worst days here abroad, they don't compare to my worst days when I was teaching in the US. So that's why I say like it's not perfect, but when I compare the US, like oh, it's not that bad.
Okay. And for context, what grade would you give your experience in the US?
Teaching in the US is hard. I would say maybe maybe like a 5, 4 or 5. It's low. It's kinda low. I wouldn't go
Dang.
completely low because it wasn't terrible. Like I loved my kids. I loved like my parents for the most part. But like administration can really make or break your experience teaching. But my administration experience like in the US was really not that good. And they really weren't as supportive, like at all. And I think that's what really pushed me to go abroad was just that. I also had an administrator who came from teaching in China, and she's like, "No, you should do it." But she also pushed me along with friends. She even wrote my recommendation letter. So it's like the fact that you have people who are like, "No, this isn't good," and you're in leadership, and you're pushing me to go. So I thought like, okay, I have to do this because I was burnt out. I was burnt out of the US teaching.
And you know what? Speaking of burnout, before you even got to this point of recording the podcast, you mentioned one of your greatest takeaways from relocating and having this new experience of with your career was kind of like that work-life balance, or should I say life work? It feels a lot more like life work, right? Than work
Yes.
life. Okay. I love that. Would you mind touching a little more on, or just elaborating a little more on other takeaways you have in regards to relocating?
Yes, I would say for me, like just takeaways for relocating, it is very anxious. Like you do get nervous, you do start to question, is it worth it? Like everyone goes through that feeling. Especially people from the US, like I think some people are like, I don't want to leave, I want to leave, I want to try it out. But then when it gets down to it, you're like, maybe I should stay. But one thing that has kept me going is if I don't like it, I can always go home. And that's what keeps me going. So if I don't like this, I can always go back home. It's not like I'm pressured to stay somewhere, or if I don't like it, I can go somewhere else. So I think even for me, when it came from teaching in Colombia, I really didn't like Colombia like that. Like the job, like I liked the personal life, but the job, I was like, it's okay. Just because like you look at like the dynamics and history of Colombia, I knew I wasn't going to stay there that long, and so in my mind, if I don't like it, I can leave. So COVID kind of helped me out with that. It kind of pushed me out. But being here, I really love like the culture here, the people here. So I think I tell people visit a place or just be open minded. Like the transition piece is definitely being open minded. Like leave your American mentality like at the airport and just come in open minded because being abroad is not all butterflies and rainbows either. Like there's some things you're gonna get so annoyed and frustrated with, and everyone's gonna look at you like, "What's your problem? What's your deal?" Because they're so accustomed to different ways than what we are. So I think that was what my biggest transition piece is just being open, being willing to try new things and just like going with the flow and like learning other people's customs and cultures and not trying to just bring in my like US mentality.
And did you have any friends that came with you or people that you know?
No, I just literally like moved with my dog. I literally like packed her up, packed my stuff up, and we both just like, okay, let's try something else.
Okay. So, what was the biggest challenge for you as you adjusted to being in Mexico City?
I will say like the biggest challenge was um just like adopting something different. Like so when I went to Colombia, my school covered everything. Like they covered housing, all of that. So all I had to do was hop off the plane, get in the van, and they took me to my apartment. Versus when I moved to Mexico, the schools here are a lot different. Like they don't really cover your housing, they give you a stipend. So I had to come prepared, like finding housing. Luckily, I had researched and found like a place before I first moved here. But you have to do a lot of stuff on your own, like finding your own housing, getting a co-signer, which is not really like an easy thing in Mexico. Um, Paying like deposits and just like the upfront cost of stuff. Even saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to a market. I'm gonna do something super local instead of going to the grocery store." But then knowing like you're a foreigner, and they might try to upcharge you a lot. I still remember to this day. I tell everyone I kind of stop going to markets unless I see like prices on them because the lady literally tried to charge me like $12, $13 for a carton of 30 eggs, which in the US you're like, oh, well, right now that might not be too much in the US, but when you know that a carton of 30 eggs only costs like maybe $4, you're like, wait, you're trying to like scam me. But it's something that happens, and I think that's something people should be mindful of. Is you are going to a country where they are going to see you as an outsider. That makes a lot more. So you just have to be mindful of that. But I would say like the frustrations was just like finding my way, seeing like where I can fit in, like how can I relocate on my own, making friends. But luckily, like I think coming to Mexico, everyone was so welcoming and so friendly compared to my experience in Colombia. It was just so much easier. And then luckily it was COVID, so the communities, everyone was trying to like still like relocate here and find a community. So I feel like the communities were a lot close knit because it's like, hey, we don't have anybody. Let's be friends.
And how much exactly, I guess, minus what your employer assisted with
Hmm.
financially, how much did you spend to move and to settle as far as space, getting, the basics of everything that you needed to make your home a home in Mexico? Yeah. What did that take?
Right. I was so my school covered like the payment of my like my luggage and stuff like that. But for me, when I first moved in, like I think I had like my rent at the time with like the currency was a little less than 1,000, like 900 something dollars for the two bedroom. It was fully furnished, so like fully furnished apartment, two bedroom, two bath. No, not two bedroom, two bath. Yeah, it was two bedroom, two bath. It was like a little less than like 1,000, like 900 something, and it was like a very popular area neighborhood. So I paid like out of pocket maybe like around $2,000, give or take, just like for that housing part of it. Um, and so that was only thing I had to initially come out of pocket with was just like the first month rent and deposit for this apartment. But like the furniture was already there. My school covered like the luggage, and so luggage, I think in flight, yeah, luggage and flight. So the only thing I had initially come out of pocket was is 2,000. But I do tell people that is the thing when you move abroad, like come prepared like a little something extra because you never know what the upfront cost of things will be.
How much would you say people should maybe set aside for moving?
Like 5 to 10,000. Like it sounds like a lot, but you just never know what might happen. Like you just never know what emergencies might happen, what fall on your plate. Like with my situation, I think, I was just lucky because my school covered a lot. But if I had to pay for my own flight, pay for my own baggage, and pay for so much more, I would have came out of pocket more than the 2,000. Like I probably would have came out like 5,000 or more, just the relocation piece of it. So you just never know um, the situation. But
Okay. Okay. Good stuff. So you mentioned that your friends encouraged you to look into uh, career opportunities abroad, and they seem like they were supportive with you moving to once you found a role. How did your family feel about you leaving?
so like my mom has always been super supportive, like with everything I do. She's like that person. Do it makes you happy. Like I wish I could do it, type of thing. But I will say, it's like my other family members and my aunts, like it's not safe, it's dangerous. Like because you see it on TV, right? Oh, the cartels are not safe. But like luckily, my mom has always been like, do what makes you happy. Like if this is something that makes you happy, do it.
Speaking of safety, I mean, how is it living in Mexico City? Do you find yourself using Spanish like everywhere you go? Or how was that? How was the language barrier? I have so many questions.
Yeah, it was a big language barrier, especially like you think, oh, you're in Colombia first, but now like Colombian Spanish and Mexican Spanish is so different. So when I first came here, I was confused for like a month. I was like, I'm so confused, I don't understand. And I realized like a lot of Mexican Spanish have a lot of slang in it. Like they just enunciate stuff different, they say stuff different. So like the first month I was like, I don't know what's going on. But then after I started understanding and just listening and practicing, I'm like, oh, okay, so it's just a few things that are off here and there. Or they might say something a different way, but I will say like yeah, like you can find doctors or people who will speak English or like a little bit and understand it, but I will say like you do have you're kind of forced to work on your Spanish. And not as bad as Colombia. Like in Colombia, hardly anybody spoke English, so you are really pushed to learn Spanish.
Um, and did you already like have some familiarity with the language before you left?
Yeah, like I've visited Mexico in the past, like coming from Texas, where there's a lot of Mexican
Oh
relatives
yeah.
there. So you're kind of familiar with it, but I would think in the US, like it's more English, right? It's not the same. Um,
So would you say for the time that you've been there, it's mostly consisted of you just getting acclimated and focusing on your career, just getting settled, um, not so much of like dating? I'm curious like how the dating pool is too. How is it
so
does it exist?
I think it's a thing. For me, it's not my thing. I have some girlfriends that have been pretty successful. For me, it's like that's not my thing. Especially like with the locals, like yeah, you can find it, but it's like, do you want it? Or some people like they might meet other foreigners here, but that's also like a laughable thing that we always say in our community. Like everyone knows everybody, so it's very interesting with that. I have had some girlfriends that have had like luck here, so there is love here if you want it, but it's like I would say like your expectations would be a little different.
And then how were you able to establish a life outside of work? Would would you say it was easy for you to find community and just get a sense of some hobbies or some interests that you've had in the US that you were able to maybe bring to Mexico?
Yeah, it's actually a lot easier making friends. Like I made pretty good friends in Colombia, but with a lot of people in Colombia, they were foreigners. They were super transient. So Colombia's immigration system is a lot harder, which is a good and bad thing. So people are very transient in Colombia, but here people like stayed a little longer, like more than just like a few weeks or a month. So during COVID, when I first came, like I was introduced to like a WhatsApp group, and then from there I just started meeting more and more people through the chat and going to different events. So there's always something going on here, like meeting other foreigners and like you meet locals too. I would say sometimes it can be a little hard, like making friends with them, but you meet locals, you make good friends. It's like it's all about the effort you put in. What you put in is what you get out. I would say, but like the local friends, international friends. I know everybody I've met has been from the U.S. Like I've met friends from Colombia, South Africa, like Brazil. I've met people from all over the world, like different African countries. Like the girl who does my hair, she's from Ivory Coast. So it's like you meet people from all over the world.
And I'm thinking about like hair care, beauty supply stores, um, being able to just get what's that brand of like gel that is in everybody's mama's house.
Like the eco
Yeah, yeah. I mean, does that even is that even something that you can find in Mexico City?
I will say like some Mexican equivalents here, but like a lot of people they bring stuff over. Like I think like in the stores you won't be able to find like Shea Moisture, right? Or like Cantu, but if you wanted some like PGIN or like other specifics and stuff, you have to bring it over. There are some people who sell it, like they get like stockpiles of it and sell it here. Sometimes it's a little bit more like higher, of course, but you pay for like, the extra fees. But the girl does my hair. She also sells a lot of products and hair and everything. The guy had like plans to bring stuff over. Whenever I go back home, I'll stock up on stuff as well.
Okay, that's something I
And
never
then,
thought of. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, no, it is. I would say it is a thing. Like even my friends in other countries, they're like, yeah, you have to stock up and bring like specific stuff to walk over. Otherwise, you kind of like press.
Not the black market selling eco gel. I, I got I got that stuff. What you want? What you want? Five
You know how
dollars.
people say that? Like, there is this one guy here who sometimes like, oh, I bought like specific products or something. So you do have people who do that, try to make like a little profit from their like little US runs and whatnot.
That's smart though. I was just thinking to myself because for some reason I've been just looking on Instagram and I've seen certain people just relocate from the US to Mexico City. Um, and it just made me think about like how that whole process like works as far as getting the necessary skincare and products that you need. And oh, that's something people don't really think about until after the fact.
Right. What actually is funny is like we're going back like the whole fire niche. Like there's like a girl who just moved here from the US. And she started her own like she does facials and stuff here. So I tell people you can find something that's not really as big. Like there's a that you can get facials here from anywhere. Some of them might be your skin specifically and stuff like that. Like, you just have to feel for it in the market. Like
Right.
especially with like hair, like I can tell people like Colombia you get box sprays for like $50, right? They're included. But here it's a lot more expensive because you don't have a bigger market. Like there's not as many braiders here as there was in Colombia. So like they do charge a little bit more, plus like taxes are a little bit higher here. So you do pay, and I think like that's one of the issues people complain about is like when you're buyers, everyone comes in like, oh, you're charging too little, you should charge more. So you do hear people hear that as they start going up on prices. Because all the foreigners are going to pay this much. Like, and I was like, oh, that's what happens. That's what happens when rent. Everyone's like, oh, this is so cheap. I could get this for a lot more than you guys. So, like, people living here, they hear it, and so they start going up on prices more and more. So yeah,
Um,
I will say like I do pay more here for like my hair, but it's not that many braiders here.
if I knew like how to clip hair, like, or I know how to braid my hair. Well, I have
Hmm.
locks down, but like before I even had the locks, yeah, I knew how to like, take synthetic hair and just intertwine it with my hair. But I'm not a cosmetologist. I'm not licensed. But if I was, or if I had a barber's license, I'll be looking at Mexico City.
But listen, people come here with no license. That's the thing. Like, I mean,
Ooh.
like in US, a lot of people have like different braiders license, right? A lot of these girls out here don't have that. Like, it, they don't have it. Sometimes it's like you just good at it, so you know, everyone just goes to you. And it's not like Mexico has the same like, you can open up a salon or something. You need to have specific credentials. Like, it's not really a thing. Some people do like hair in their house, just like in the US too.
I don't know how I feel about that. But golly, okay. Well, that's just another thing to consider if you're listening and you're thinking about relocating, you might want to think about who gonna do your hair. Who's gonna do your hair, and are they gonna do it properly, and they gonna follow safety procedures, not even just with your hair, but I mean with skincare. And gosh, that is pivotal and something I did not think about until now. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
mean, like, yes, you have like those who learn and practice, but it's not something like, oh, you need to have a license to do this. Yeah, people get it, but it's not something like, oh yeah, you would feel like in a salon or studio. You wouldn't see that. It's interesting.
Going back to your experience and your journey of the past 3 years, would you do this all over again, or do you think you're content with where you are now?
I would say I would do it all over again. What's actually funny is I do want to do like a transition back to the US just to be like, oh, let's see how I like it, right? And if it doesn't go how I want it to go, I like go back abroad because I actually do like it. It's very low pressure, low stress. Like when I talk to friends back home, everyone's always stressed out and worked up. I would say like, it would be something I would do all over again. But I don't regret moving abroad and going for this opportunity because I think it has opened up my eyes, opened up my mind to like different thoughts, different perspectives, different like ways to look at things.
And with the position that you have now, is it a contract position, or is it something that you can just stick with until you move up or until you're ready to pivot to another company or position
Yeah,
elsewhere?
so I am under contract with this school that I'm at. The school I switched schools since I've been here. But so the school that I'm at was actually bought by this like big global company, and so like if I wanted to stay within this company but not leave, well, stay within the company but leave this school, they have schools all over like the globe. They have schools in the U.S. Actually, I think like every continent except like Africa and Antarctica, but they have schools all over the world globally. And so if I wanted to leave here and go to Houston, Charlotte, DC, or wherever in the US, I could do
Oh,
that. So yeah, like that's the one perk of staying with this company if I do stick with them, is I can hop around to different schools within their network and it'll be a lot easier for me because I'm already in their system.
okay. And you might have to drop the gems as far as some of the resources that you looked into when you
Hmm.
considered moving, and maybe that recruiting company that you
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
earlier. Yeah.
So like I did like a company, it was called ISS Scroll. And I did that company initially. Now I think since it is separated and mainly go through scroll now. And so like these are paid for recruitment companies. So I do tell people like going back to you get what you pay for. So like these big recruitment companies, like they are partnering with some of the schools all over the globe. There are free companies, there are like less cost efficient ones as well, but I say like if you want something, it's going to be a guaranteed good school, pay for that. Like that high ranking company. I'm gonna look up and see like what the company is. So the top of my mind, like it's right there in my head. I can't think of it, but definitely Scroll is a very popular recruitment company. I know like some people recommend Teachaway, but Teachaway sometimes doesn't have like very vetted schools. Or I've had friends that go through Teachaway and kind of been miserable later on.
What is next for you as far as like other plans you have that you may not have mentioned? Um,
Like, going back to earlier where if you're interested, like even just leaving a state and going to a different state, it's just being open and research, right? Research, research, research. Use those same skill sets if you wanted to go broad. Research and being open. Like when I left before I went to Louisiana, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Fresh out of college, confused. I still went in with an open mind because every region is different, every state is different. So same thing going abroad. Just be open to something different. And if you are really interested in going abroad, it's just seeing what's out there. If you're a teacher, like look up schools that you're interested in, see like how they are linked, or see like what recruitment companies are like partnering with these schools. If you're wanting to just live abroad and not teach, right? Like, what can you do to still make money? Because especially nowadays, a lot of these U.S. companies are not really allowing people to go like live internationally for a long period of time. So, what would you do to like make money? So it's definitely something to consider. But I always tell people try it out. Like, the best experience ever. Like when I look at friends that has living here in New York have relocated and it's like they want to go back abroad sometimes because it's just you miss it. But definitely try it out and tell everyone like if it's just for like a couple months or a year, like do it because it's some of the best experience ever. Like people think in college like doing it to study abroad is cool. Now wait till you like don't have to take classes and you can just live the life. It's so different.
And my final question, okay. So think about the Candace that was doing research and was ready to find a role to even move outside the US. You know, you were just looking for opportunities, you were ready to go. Think about that Candace compared to the Candace that we're speaking to right now and listening to right now. What advice would you give that Candace from 4 years ago?
The advice I would give kids 4 years ago was don't question it, don't overthink it. Because I think like I was wanting to do like going abroad like probably after my second year in Houston, but I was scared. And I think it took like 4 years my third year where it was just like just chaos going on at work and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So when I actually took it serious, right? But don't wait until you're just so burnt out and exhausted and you feel like you just like defeated of yourself, right? Because you do want to go in it with all like aware of what you're about to sign up for. And I think sometimes when people go abroad, they just jump into it and don't really think or process or prepare for like what is going to happen. You do see some people like you, I meet people all the time here where after a few months they go back home because it's like they either couldn't afford it or they realize it's not that easy here abroad either. So definitely just go for it. Don't question it. Go for it. But then don't try to escape. Like, I think that's what they're out there. Don't try to escape. 'Cause I meet people who try to escape, and they're supposed to be like the first people to like fly. But just be open and go for it. Don't question it. That's what I would tell myself. Like, if I didn't question myself so much, like, I probably would have been abroad a lot sooner. Like, questioning, like, doubting myself. Like, I don't know, my friends. What if I don't like it? Or if it's a big leap? Like, now I'm like, I love it. I wish I would have did this a lot sooner.
I'm proud of you, girl.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the company I was thinking about is called Search Associates. That's like the top recruiting company, Search Associates.
Search Associates. Is that just
Yeah.
for people in education or
Yeah. It's just
did
for
you see?
people in education. I
Okay.
will, I will say, like I mentioned, and you see it so much in the Facebook group. It's like it's really hard to go to other companies because in this country and get a job that is not like say teaching, for example, because with the laws in a lot of these countries, is you have to be someone that is more skilled or local to you. Otherwise, you're going to be undertaken in local. So you can't just go and say like, oh, I want to be a doctor or nurse. Like, no, because they have doctors, they have nurses. Like, I think in like some parts of the Middle East, they will take U.S. nurses, but it's not that common. Like, when you say, oh, well, in my country, I was like a beautician, a bus driver, or whatever, but they have that in these countries. So it's like you have to bring a skill set that where their government will say, okay, you can hire that foreigner instead of hiring a local. So that is like why I tell people it's not that easy finding work in other countries. But like teaching is just easy because everyone wants, you know, to have their people fluent in English. So of course, like when you're a teacher, like oh perfect, you can teach my people here how to speak English.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Candace, thank you so much.
Thank